Michael Lawrence Tyler, better known by his stage name Mystikal, rose to stardom combining powerful, passionate vocals that would range from a whisper to a shout in the course of a few words, and was constantly accelerating and decelerating his delivery. The sound was new, but not unprecedented, as his vocals were reminiscent of R&B screamers like Little Richard and James Brown. Unfortunately, the self-proclaimed Prince of the South couldn't stay out of trouble, causing his high-flying life to crash overnight and him to wind up behind bars for years. Mystikal was born on September 22, 1970 in New Orleans, Louisiana. He grew up in the city's 12th ward in a disciplined household run by his mother, along with an older sister and younger brother. His father, who ran a small neighborhood store, died when Mystikal was only 7 years old. Even though he harbored hip-hop dreams in junior high as a breakdancer known as Mystikal Mike, after graduating from high school, he joined the United States Army. He later went to Iraq as a combat engineer during Operation Desert Storm. He was very honest about the reason he signed up for the experience in a 2002 interview with Spin magazine. "I didn't join for no patriotic reason. I wanted to better my life. And be all that you can be. I joined to get a BMW, and all I got was a Ford Topaz. It wasn't the career I wanted. I wanted to be a rapper." After his military stint ended, he returned to New Orleans to focus on his craft. He joined a local rap group called the 3-9 Posse and started making demos. But he still needed to work a 9-to-5, so he got a number of jobs, as an undercover security guard at a shopping center, in a restaurant, as well as an usher at the Superdome. A one-song performance at the Treme Center, opening for Run DMC and Dougie Fresh, brought him to the attention of Leroy "Precise" Edwards, a producer for local rap label Big Boy Records. Before he knew it, Mystikal was recording his first single for the label called Not That Nigga. It also features his sister Michelle on the chorus. As he crafted his debut album, life looked good. Sadly, tragedy intervened on the night of Mystikal's 24th birthday. Michelle was brutally murdered. He was the one to discover her body. Michelle's boyfriend, Damian Neville, son of local jazz singer Charmaine Neville, was arrested for the killing. He initially confessed, then claimed police beat it out of him. At trial, his attorney suggested drug dealers to whom he was in debt committed the crime. He would end up being acquitted. Devastated, Mystikal recorded a spoken word tribute to his sister called Dedicated to Michelle Tyler. It served as the closing track of his debut album. The self-titled project, released in 1994, became a regional hit, thanks to his official first single, Y'all Ain't Ready Yet, which went to number 12 on the Hot Rap Songs chart. Jive Records bought his contract and re-released an altered version of the album nationally the following year, titled Mind of Mystikal. Also that year, Mystikal found himself involved in a verbal beef with fellow New Orleans rappers signed to New Orleans-based label Cash Money Records, including trio UNLV and duo The Bee Gees, which included a 12-year-old Lil Wayne. They dissed him on tracks like Drag 'Em in the River by UNLV and Big Boy by the Bee Gees. He struck back with several records of his own, including Beware and Here I Go. Ultimately, Mystikal and Wayne would put their differences aside and later become collaborators. 2 years later, Mystikal joined Master P's No Limit Army and dropped 1997's Unpredictable. Even though the single Ain't No Limit only achieved minor success, peaking at number 63 on the Hot R&B Hip Hop Songs chart, the album went to number 3 on the Billboard 200 and number 1 on the Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart. Ghetto Fabulous followed in 1998 and put up similar numbers, taking the number 5 spot on the 200 chart and the top spot on the Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart. After parting ways with No Limit, he released 2000's Let's Get Ready on Jive. It yielded the smash singles Shake Your Ass,
Shake Your Ass, Watch Yourself, Shake Your Ass, Show Me What You're Working With,
and Danger, Been So Long, featuring rising R&B star Nivea.
Been so long.
Sing it.
He's been on.
The album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, making it Mystikal's only album to reach the top of the chart. Shake Your Ass was also nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Rap Solo Performance. In addition to his solo work, Mystikal also received high praise for his contributions to other artists' hit records throughout the late 90s and early 2000s, like Master P's Make 'Em Say Silk the Shockers, It Ain't My Fault, Joe's Stutter, and Ludacris's Move Bitch. Mystikal released Tarantula in 2001, which contained the hit single Bounce It Back, Bumpin' Me Against the Wall. It made it into the top 10 on the Hot R&B Hip Hop Song Chart and Hot Rap Songs Chart, coming in at number 8 and number 7 respectively. The project garnered him 2 more Grammy Award nominations for Best Rap Album and Best Male Rap Solo Performance for Bounce It Back. Fun fact, despite its orally fixated title, another track on Tarantula called Go Ahead finds Mystikal documenting the innocent first date with the quote love of his life. But when talking about it to Spin magazine, he revealed some additional, shocking information. I was talking about my baby mother. I had one child with her and then had another one on her ass with another woman. And she's still stuck in there with me. I'm a typical man, f***ing it up for everyone. But the song is clean fun. They can play it at proms. Around this same time, Mystikal would also start to dabble in another art form, acting. As he was climbing the ladder of success, he'd largely avoided trouble, save for an incident in December 1998 when police in Kenner, Louisiana, pulled him over and found a gun and joint in his car. Still, friends and fans were shocked when in July 2002, he was arrested on a far more serious charge. According to police and prosecutors, Mystikal accused his hairdresser, a woman who had worked with him for several years, of writing $80,000 worth of unauthorized checks from his account. She denied the accusation. He offered not to press charges if she engaged in sex acts with him and 2 bodyguards. Afterwards, she contacted police. Mystikal and the bodyguards were arrested. Initially, Mystikal was charged with aggravated rape, which carried a mandatory life sentence. However, in June 2003, he pled guilty to a lesser charge of sexual battery and extortion. In January 2004, he was sentenced to 6 years in state prison. As part of a plea bargain, the 2 bodyguards also pled guilty. Mystikal initially claimed that the incident was consensual, but a videotape of the incident was later found at his home shortly after the charges were made. Negotiations during the trial held the videotape from being entered as evidence, and Mystikal agreed to the plea bargain offered by the prosecution, avoiding the mandatory life sentence for sexual battery in Louisiana and expecting to receive probation. However, the case took a twist when the judge viewed the videotape at the sentencing, took into account Mystikal's prior arrests, and had him remanded into custody to begin serving his sentence immediately. In August 2005, while already incarcerated, Mystikal was charged federally with 2 misdemeanor counts of failing to file tax returns for 1998 and 1999. In January 2006, he was convicted in federal court of the tax offenses, but was allowed to serve the 1-year federal sentence concurrent with his 6-year state sentence. The following January, Mystikal was released from custody on the federal misdemeanor tax convictions as his 1-year sentence had expired, but he remained in custody on the 6-year sentence for the Louisiana state felony convictions. He was released for good in January 2010. After his release, Mystikal was registered as a sex offender. While speaking about his sexual battery and extortion case to NOLA.com in 2010, he fully accepted blame. Did I make a horrible mistake? Was it stupid? Hell yeah. But did I do what they said I did? I can't do it like that. So I put myself in that position to make it look like that. So I've got to take my lick. Because I wasn't acting like Albert Einstein, and I didn't go to jail for praying too loud in church. Where else do I have to look? You've got to be brutally honest with yourself, and that's where all the lessons come from. You've got to say, of all the ways you could have handled a situation, that's the way you handled it? What's wrong with you? You can't lie to yourself. I was the mastermind of the whole situation. One dumbass decision hurt a slew of people. As far as his take on his tax offenses go, he stated, I didn't have malicious intentions. It was pure, unadulterated inexperience, uncut, raw stupidity. I left it up to other people, but that was on me. Before his conviction, Mystikal had started seeing a woman named Tedra. Their relationship deepened while he was in prison. Not long after his release, she became pregnant, and they got engaged. Mystikal was not only looking forward to being an involved father to their baby, but to also build a bond with his 11-year-old daughter and 10-year-old son from previous relationships. It's unclear whether the couple ever did marry. In an interesting twist, Mystikal signed to Cash Money Records in 2011. He released the single Original featuring Birdman and Lil Wayne, but it didn't do anything on the charts. Due to creative differences with the label, a full album was never done. In February 2012, Mystikal was arrested again following a dispute with his domestic partner and was later given a misdemeanor charge of domestic abuse battery. He was detained for 9 days and then released on bail. In April, he was given a 3-month jail sentence for violating the terms of his probation he was given following his release from prison in January 2010. He was given credit for the 9 days already served, reducing his confinement to 81 days. He began serving his sentence that May. During his incarceration, he appeared in court to be heard on the domestic battery charges, as well as for a hearing to determine child support payments for his 2 youngest children. He was released from jail in August. Mystikal got right back to business, recording, performing, and collaborating with other big-named artists. For several years, it appeared that he was going to stay on the straight and narrow. But then, in August 2017, Mystikal turned himself into the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Department after a warrant was issued for his arrest. He was subsequently charged with 1 count each of first-degree rape and second-degree kidnapping. While his bond was set at $3 million, his defense lawyer filed a motion asking that the bail be reduced to $500,000. However, it was learned the Shreveport Police Department obtained a recorded statement from the victim in the case. The prior December, he pleaded not guilty to the charges, which stem from an alleged sexual assault at a downtown Shreveport casino in October 2016. In the end, the $3 million bond stuck, so Mystikal wasn't going to be released until he posted bond, which wasn't done until 18 months later, in February 2019. The charges were eventually dropped after a second grand jury declined to bring an indictment due to new evidence presented. At the end of July 2022, Mystikal was again arrested in Louisiana on charges relating to first-degree rape, simple robbery, domestic abuse battery, false imprisonment, and simple criminal damage to property. Deputies responded to an area hospital in reference to a sexual assault. Upon interviewing the victim, who sustained minor injuries during the attack, Mystikal was identified as a suspect. That September, he received an indictment on the charges. In a warrant, sheriff's investigators said the woman at the center of the case went to Mystikal's home in Prairieville in July, seeking financial help to set someone up in an apartment. He, allegedly, took her car keys and cell phone and held her against her will at his home. He, allegedly, raped and strangled her, threatened her life with scissors, and, at one point, prayed with her to remove her, quote, bad spirits. Before she could leave his home, Mystikal allegedly forced the woman to give him $150 in cash through a cell phone app. He earlier had accused her of stealing cash from him and hit her when she denied it. Less than 2 weeks later, Mystikal would enter a plea of not guilty on all charges. In August, he was denied the requested $250,000 bond. In March 2023, a judge presiding over the case barred attorneys, law enforcement officials, and potential witnesses from speaking to the news media. Mystikal's new lawyer asked for the gag order due to the, quote, inordinate amount of publicity, end quote, the case has received since his arrest. The gag order bars attorneys for either side from commenting on the case to any individual or entity, including radio, television, and newspaper reporters. Mystikal's former attorneys are also barred from speaking publicly about the case. The following month, Mystikal's attorney asked for and was granted a continuance of his trial that had been set to begin in June, as she needed time to familiarize herself with the case in order to provide efficient representation. Since then, it doesn't appear that there are any further updates on the case, and Mystikal currently remains in custody at the Ascension Parish Jail. If found guilty, as far as the first-degree rape charge goes, he will face a life sentence under state law.